Hello and welcome to I Should Say That Out Loud. I'm your host, Donna Brendel. This is the second episode of 2025 of my project theme for the year. I'm covering the different definitions of project. There are 11 of them. So I'll be covering one definition of the word project every month from February to December. And this month, the definition from the Oxford Dictionary is to estimate or forecast on the basis of trends or data. And I have a lot of books and experts and research to share with you going back to the early 1900s and all the way through to our modern day 2000s, 2025 even. So before I get to the book reviews, and the information in them and from those experts, I am going to cover a few of the trends that I'm seeing lately in the experts that I'm following in some of these books and on social media and YouTube in all of the different videos that I've been watching and learning from. I'm really excited to pull together the origins, I think, of where we are today, how we've gotten to where we are today, and where I think some of these ideas and trends have started. We'll see what you think. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you agree. To let you know a little bit more about myself, I am a late diagnosed woman on the autism spectrum, and I also am dyslexic, and I have OCD and anxiety. So I have a broad range of the things, the comorbidities that can often come with autism. I have a lot to share today, and it may take a few chunks of time for you to get through all of it, but I'm hoping that you can see the trends and the development over the decades and over the past 115 years, give or take. So first, the trends that I'm seeing lately in the last few years is, well, the first one is burnout, autistic burnout. And it's funny too, because as I prepare for these podcast episodes this year in the theme of projecting, of improving my ability to communicate my thoughts and my ideas and my knowledge and research in the midst of the struggles that I have of communication, I'm also editing my second memoir, which is called Autistic Revelations, Career Edition. And it walks through the journey of my education and career changes, not just job changes, but many career changes. And I never knew that there was a name for this cycle of changing jobs and changing careers that I went through, or why I had to do that every 2 to 3 years or so. But now that I'm learning and we're all corporately learning more about autistic burnout, it makes so much more sense. So I'm incorporating that into my memoir as well. I'm hoping to have the pre-sale date of that book ready for May 17th. I'm not sure if I should give that date yet, but that is my goal. And I'm hoping to launch that pre-sale date on April 1st. It's going to be so exciting for me to launch that book. So in learning about autistic burnout and in writing about it and reading about it now, I'm recognizing something that my pastor used to talk about regularly. And he would talk about living with margin. So when you write on paper, or paper and pen, you leave space on the edges. Or when you type in, a word processing software, or when you read a book, there is a margin on the edge. And that is a visual way to give us some space to read more easily. If the words were printed all the way to the edges of the page, it would be harder for our brain to follow the words and receive the information. And it also gives us space to write notes and to process what we're reading and remember where we left off and things like that. So he talked about living with margin in your life, having that space on the outer edges of our days and our weeks and our months, so that we're not living up to the edge of our life on a constant basis. And that's what I had done for a very long time, is I lived without margin. I didn't know that neurotypical people lived with margin. I couldn't conceptualize that, because in order for me to keep up with the educational demands, the job demands, the life demands, activities of daily living demands, self-care demands, motherhood demands, I had to use every minute of every day and every ounce of energy that I had in my brain and in my body to keep up with doing all of these things. And I think that's why I got so exhausted in my different jobs and roles over the years. And because I wasn't able to communicate my struggles, I thought, I'm in the wrong job or I'm in the wrong career. I have to figure out something different. I have to try something different. And it helped when I had my children and I was able to stay home with them for the first few months and few years. I stayed home for a different amount of time with each of them. But those were some of the best times for me to recover physically from living without margin. And I lived with much more margin when my children were babies than I did when they were older and I went back to my life without margin again. And then I experienced that burnout cycle again. So understanding and giving this phenomenon a name, I think, is so helpful for me to recognize and to see the cycle over the years, and then to educate other people about it for themselves, and so that we can help, so professionals can help other people in the counseling setting, in teaching, and helping kids and adults learn to live with margin and give ourselves grace and time to breathe and take care of ourselves and process emotions and process information. It's so important. I had no idea how constantly I was burning myself out, just trying to keep up with the way I saw other people living, not realizing how differently my brain works and how much more, even though I could do it, I could keep up, and I did a really good job of it. Externally, people saw that I did a good job, but they didn't see the internal battle and the harm that it did to my body. I was diagnosed with colon cancer at the age of 38, had surgery and chemo and all of that to recover, which thankfully I did. Thank you, God, for that. But they also didn't see the emotional trauma and the relational trauma that had caused me for so long, and took me a lot of counseling and therapy to recover from and to learn to have boundaries and margin, even in relationships. Wow, that's a big thought that I didn't even have in my notes. Okay, so the next trend is reporting autism and any other neurodivergence to your workplace, to HR, or to your bosses, or to your coworkers, and asking for accommodations. So there's a rising trend of people knowing, being diagnosed as autistic. More children are being diagnosed and more adults are being late diagnosed. And then realizing that they need help and accommodations in the workplace. So they're reporting it, but the workplaces are not ready for this reporting and for this knowing of how to help people with autism and neurodivergence. And so even though there's more reporting, there's not enough knowledge of how to help people who are reporting autism and neurodivergence, and how to help not just accommodate the neurodivergent workforce, but also to get the most benefit out of having a neurodivergent workforce, because I'm dyslexic and I think so much differently than someone who's not dyslexic. And I'm reading, I guess that's another trend, is learning that people with dyslexia have such a different perspective and way of seeing things and thinking about things that it can really benefit a company. But if the company doesn't know how to accommodate that person's workspace and working style, then that person might not stay, and they might not offer the best of what they have to offer. So that's complicated. But that is a rising trend as well. Also, there's a rising trend of, there's a lot of dyslexic groups and people and organizations who are bringing a greater awareness of how beneficial the dyslexic mind can be to society in general, but also to companies and to workplaces. So I'm really excited about that. And it's kind of what I'm doing here with my podcast is I have all these thoughts and ideas I've never been able to utilize in a workplace. So I'm making my own space to share them. And it's overwhelming to me. It's probably overwhelming to you when you see the length of my episode, but also maybe as I start to read from these books and digest the trends that I've seen over the past 115 years, it's a lot. And it might take some time to digest and process the ideas that I have and for people to be able to do something with it if my thoughts and ideas are good. And hopefully they are. It's even hard for me to communicate all my thoughts and ideas in my educational setting because I'm finally catching up with getting my degree. I'm finishing my associate's degree right now, and I graduate in May. And that's why I'm setting my pre-sale date for my second memoir for May 17th, because that's my graduation date. But I'm taking classes that, someone in their early 20s or late teens even would generally take. And I have many decades of work experience in reading all of this material that's so interesting to me. And I have so much to share, but my classes are at such a beginner level that I'm kind of like just going through the motions of doing the basics to get to that upper level to where I can hopefully share this information with my professors and put together research. I really want to do research and tie all of these things together, publish and speak on my thoughts and ideas. That's my goal. I guess that's what I'm projecting my future goals here in putting all of this information together. And I've had these ideas because I read a lot of books all at the same time, and it takes me a long time to get through them. But the cool thing about reading so many books at once is that I can see information that relates from the different books and from these different eras, because I'm reading current modern books and old, books from the early 1900s. And the ideas go together, and there you can see the genesis of all of what's happening now back in these earlier books. Well, I can see it. I don't know if others have the capacity to read this many books at a time. I think when I talk about the way I read, it kind of like stresses people out, but it stresses me out to try to read one book at a time because I'm like, there are so many books to read. Just one at a time is not enough. And I get bored of reading one book at a time. I need to switch around. And then I just really enjoy when I start to see the patterns in over time and across genres and across experts and people writing memoir. I love memoir and biography, and to see how actually autistic people writing memoirs now and sharing the progress in how technology is enabling them to speak and communicate gives us such a window into the genesis of some of these ideas back from the early 1900s. And I'm sure even before that, I haven't gone back before that yet, but I may someday. Okay, so that's the trend of reporting neurodivergence in the workplace and more. Another trend I'm learning about in school, as well as through these modern authors and modern podcasters and content creators especially, is learning about the struggle that people with autism have with activities of daily living, ADLs. And it's so weird to talk about. It gives me a block. I stumble to think about being this vulnerable and honest, I guess is what it is. Maybe. I don't want to tell you about it, but like my job where I work with the kids is to, get them up and get them showered every day. And I feel bad because I struggle to get up and get showered every day. And here I'm at work trying to force the kids to do that every day. And I know for myself how big of a struggle that is. And here I'm trying to force this on these children who struggle with it. It's a battle for me, but I don't like to shower first thing in the morning. I do when I have to start work early. Part of it is it's colder first thing in the morning, especially here in Wisconsin in the winter. But also, when I first wake up, if on the days that I don't have to work, I would rather go get a cup of coffee first before I get in the shower, or, sit and read a little bit, or just sit and look out the window for a little bit and just kind of wake up and kind of ease into the day. I love easing into the day. For me, that's an activity of daily living that is a self-care practice for me, easing into the day. And I think a lot of kids who have neurodivergence or autism prefer to ease into the day too. And then for people who are neurotypical and they just get up and pop in the shower and, oh, that felt so good, I'm ready for my day. I'm like, that's not the way it works for me. And I see with the kids I work with that it's not the way it works for a lot of them as well. Some of them do like to get up and shower right away, and that's great. That is great. But it's just and the experience is different for every person with autism, for every person with neurodivergence. It's not the same experience for everyone. That is very important to say. So hearing all of these other podcasters and autistic content creators talking about their struggles with activities of daily living is refreshing for me because it helps me be more vulnerable and honest about it. And I brush my teeth in the morning and at night, and then I wake up the next morning. I'm like, I just brushed my teeth last night. I got to do it again. But I know that when I go to my teeth cleaning every 6 months, it's so much less painful when I do my teeth brushing every morning and every night. And my teeth look better, which I really appreciate. So I force myself to do these things. But once I finish, my shower, my teeth brushing and all of the things and oil on my face and lotion on my body, sometimes I feel like this is really good. I am like nurturing myself. This feels like luxurious that I have the time to do these things. But then when I don't have as much time, or if it's early in the morning, I'm like, it's just drudgery and I just have to get through it. And then once I get through it, I feel like, phew, like the hardest part of my day is done, even though I still have to go to work or I still have to do, school assignments or whatever it is. That 5, 10, 20 minutes of my daily living activities is drudgery. But if I can do it later in the day, it's much more enjoyable and it feels much more luxurious, if that makes sense. Moving on from that, happily. Another trend that I'm seeing lately is a lot of struggle with the concept of ABA, applied behavior analysis, and looking for and finding other therapy modalities other than ABA, and hearing and reading from people with autism who had ABA when they were younger, before they were able to learn and utilize assistive technology or AAC devices. They are able to share, once they're able to write and communicate, how harmful ABA was to them, even though in some ways they appreciated it because they saw how it helped kind of move them forward and maybe get them ready for other learning and other treatments, like using the AAC devices. But maybe there's other ways to prepare children to learn how to use those devices to communicate. I'm not an expert in any of that, but this is the trend that I'm seeing, is many people who are actually autistic and researchers who are actually autistic trying to help experts and professionals and families move away from ABA and into other therapies. And so I mentioned the AAC devices, where children can point to the pictures And then also typing, where they can actually learn to type their thoughts. In letterboards, where they can point to the letters and communicate through that. And also another very recent treatment modality I've learned about is from somebody whose name is Soma, is her first name, Soma. And I am going to have to spell her name out here in my editing. I don't even know how to pronounce it, but it's Mukopadhyaya is my best try. I'm sorry if I said it wrong. But she has developed what she calls rapid prompting, the rapid prompting method, or RPM. And she utilized this method with her son, Tito, and it worked for him. And now she's using this method with other children, and it's working for other children. And one of the books that I'll be reading from is written by one of the children who received this rapid prompting method from Soma, and he is able to write and type and communicate now. And wow, the things that he is sharing. It's phenomenal. I don't think I could ever facilitate that method because I can't speak rapidly like she does. I've seen some of her videos and I'm like, holy cow, I could not say that much that fast constantly all day long to my child or to any child. I'm much more of a quiet supporter of my children and of other children that I work with. So for those who can do that, I think it's I don't know if other people are utilizing it yet other than Soma. I have to do some more research about that. The last trend I'm seeing is research methods. Research has been really slow in autism. It was slow to non-existent because the original assumption was that autism was caused by refrigerator mothers or cold or unfeeling mothers, non-nurturing mothers. And then everybody just kind of accepted that without even any research to prove it. And mothers were blamed and guilted into believing that they caused their children to be autistic. And no research was done to actually help children or moms or parents or caregivers at all. And so that stopped any progress in learning what causes autism and how to help autistic children and people for decades, literally decades. And now that theory has been ruled out for a long time, and then other theories have come along, which have also been ruled out. And now we're, I think, getting to some actual good research. And then more recently, two different trends I've heard of is either some countries have made it illegal to do research on autistic people because we are a protected class. They are saying that it's harmful to do research on autistic people, which I maybe could understand for nonverbal autistic people where they can't speak up for themselves and communicate whether they understand what's happening or not and give consent. I can understand. But there's many verbal autistic people who can participate in research and understand and give consent to being part of the research. So that part I don't understand. And then there are countries that don't even acknowledge that autism is even real. So then how can you research something that's not even acknowledged as real? And then the third, and I think most exciting trend in research is including autistic people in the research process. And one of the books I'll be reading from has really embraced that process and that concept. And I think it's a beautiful thing.